Good morning and welcome to Western Missouri. Today we're going to explore along the border, kind of just a few miles from Kansas. We're going to stay in Missouri all day today and see what we can find. It looks like about a dozen or so towns down the stretch here. On the other side of the border in Kansas, there's Highway 69. Probably do a future video on that highway, so we're going to stay over here in Missouri because there's not really a road that goes all the way down through where we're going to be exploring. But it looks like some interesting places, some small incorporated towns, some very small incorporated towns along the way, a couple, with a few hundred, and then some ghost towns, kind of like where we're starting here in, I think it's called Jaudon, Jaudon. And looks pretty innocent enough, but has some very interesting history. I'm standing under the railroad bridge here, and this was a stop along the railway back in the day. Had a post office for a couple decades, and some famous people like Jesse James was rumored to have been in this area. Also being so close to the border with like Civil War history, so close to Kansas and being in Missouri here. So there's a lot of interesting history, and there's the public house here, which is a kind of local business establishment. If you read online, there could have been some maybe not so good guys had been in this area of Missouri. So really cool place to start out. So let me show you kind of the path that we're going to go through Missouri. Using my Delorme Atlas and Gazetteer, not a sponsor. I've joked about that. They'd be a good sponsor for this channel. But there's Kansas City. You can see I've done a couple videos in this area. There's US 50. There's Route 58 starting in Belton. And we're going to start just south of there. You can see Jaudon. And we're going to, looks like Road D down to Cleveland, and then on down that way. On the next page there, Merwin, Amsterdam. You can see Kansas, how close it is right there. There's that Kansas border. And we'll wander our way down and see what we can find. And the goal is to make it to Richards today. I believe that's the Kansas City Southern Railroad, and this is an old railroad map, and you can see down the middle there, that's the towns we're going to see, like Amsterdam and Amoret, Worland, and so it's all following the same railroad line from north to south. And you see where Jaudon is there. And let's go ahead and head down to Cleveland and then Westline. Our first incorporated town of the day is Cleveland. This was actually called Maxwell originally and was platted in 1890 by Thomas Maxwell, and then they changed the name to Cleveland after then President Grover Cleveland. Post office has been open since 1890. Population was fairly small in the early decades, less than 200, and then started to go up. You can see there, peaked at 661 in 2010, and has currently 650 people. Next up is the small town of Westline. This was originally named Stateline. You can imagine why it was called that, because we're right near the border with Kansas. It was platted in 1870, earlier than some of our other towns here. And post office was called Stateline in 1871. They changed that to Westline in 1875. They had a post office here until 1973. The population has been pretty consistently small, but pretty consistent. Just over 100 people for most of the first half of its life. It did drop down into double digits for a while, and then the last census is back up to triple digits. All right, we're down a country road here. Right behind us is Kansas, that way. And this is what's called a gravity hill. This isn't a big one, but it does look like it's up. It goes up in that direction. And I've done a couple of these gravity hills before, and so you put it in neutral and it seems like you go up a hill. So it's hard to tell on camera, but it does feel like it's going up. We're heading east that way. I'm in neutral. Take my foot off the brake. And it feels like we're going up the hill. I don't think we're going to go up that big hill. I think it's going to stop here at some point. And there we go. I've been to some better gravity hills before, but it's always kind of an interesting thing to check out. So we're going to stay on that Route D, head down to Lisle and Drexel, which is right on the state border. And then final town on this page is Merwin. So there's our road that we've been traveling down, going left to right, north to south. And right here at this railroad was a town called Lisle, L-I-S-L-E. You can see a couple buildings. See one through the trees right there. Also a older house, and looks like somebody lives over here too. And then down in the trees down there, an abandoned house. But they had a post office here from 1891 to 1954. Obviously it's just a little railroad community, but had some level of importance. It's very quiet today. Drexel is the largest town that we'll visit today with 968 as its population. It was originally called Stuart City and was platted with that name in 1890. The present name of Drexel was the name of a local store owner, and the post office named Drexel was opened in 1891, still in operation today. Population has generally grown through the years, actually went over 1,000 in the year 2000, it has dropped just a little bit down to 968. Our next town is Merwin. A little bit unusual, I thought. Interesting place to visit. It was platted in 1891 and was named for James Merwin, who was a railroad official. They opened the post office that year in 1891 as well, and then the post office closed in 1969, but it is still an incorporated town. Population figures were at its highest in the early 1900s and then dropped into double digits in 1940. Basically remained the same ever since then. As you drive around, lots of abandoned houses. And then I saw a whole bunch of like semi-trucks and trailers and automobiles and just different things kind of as a graveyard almost. I mean, they're kind of everywhere in Merwin. So I'm not sure what the story is behind that. I did find a sign here with a name on it, so maybe it's some sort of a storage / junkyard business. But yeah, they're everywhere. So interesting stop here in Merwin. Heading down Road Y, down to Amsterdam, Amoret, and then we're going to go right on that Stateline Road, some back roads over to Worland. Our next stop is Amsterdam, and yes, it is named after the capital of the Netherlands. It was started in 1891 along the railroad, like a lot of these other towns, same year. And a man named Arthur Stilwell, who was a early railroad executive, chose the name Amsterdam because the Dutch capital was where the firm of an important railroad financier was located. They opened a post office in 1892. They have a great downtown, a lot of cool old historic buildings, and then you can tell they definitely take care of the area. Population has been pretty consistent. I guess you'd say it's gone up a little bit over time, being less than 200 before 1980 and then over 200 since then. Another small town here, Amoret, has had a post office since 1885. Is probably named after the biblical Amorites. And if you look at the population, it was much larger, up to 390 in 1920, and you'll notice how it's really dropped off recently, especially since the last census, down to 133. Still have some interesting old buildings here in the downtown area. over there. We got Kansas over here. I like this little drive down the Stateline Road with Missouri on one side and Kansas on the other. And over here, this is the East Mine Creek Trail right there. Got a sign here that talks about how this was a rail bed that was used in coal mining, and each path leads to a lake created by the mining operation. So if you want to get out and stretch your legs, if you're taking this tour sometime, you can check that out. I'm not going to do that today, but it's here if you're interested. Our next community of Worland is basically a ghost town. I drove around all the streets and found there may be a couple people living here, but a lot of abandonment. It had a post office, started in 1887 and went until 1952, was along the railroad all these other towns were. It was named after Harry Worland, who ran a local pharmacy. But yeah, driving around, that's pretty much what you're going to see in Worland. As we leave Worland, you can see the railroad where it went, and we're kind of following right along it there. So we go down to Hume, see a little dot on the map, Amos, you can see where the railroad went there, Stotesbury, and then we're going to finish down in Richards. Our next town is Hume, and if that sounds familiar at all, it's because I did a video about Hume a couple years ago, and so I'm not going to kind of revisit the whole town of Hume, but I'll show a little clip here of that video, and if you want to learn all about Hume, you can watch that Small Town USA video. We're in the general vicinity of the ghost town of Amos. Had a post office from 1893 to 1931, and I'm driving around, not finding much. I found like an old building over that direction after I crossed the railroad tracks. I don't know if it was a school or a church. Looked like a pretty old building though. And then there's one other road that goes around the community, and I found this very cool old bridge. Certainly on the same railroad we've been following all day, and nice to find something like this. This is very cool. Obviously a one-lane road. There you go. Also found a cemetery kind of on the outskirts of town. And but yeah, not much else left of Amos. Welcome to Stotesbury, Missouri, population 12. And believe it or not, that is Main Street right there. Right here along the railroad, like all of our other towns and ghost towns, and this is almost a ghost town. Hard to believe that this town wasn't in my 10 smallest towns video in Missouri, but the 10th smallest town in that video had 10 people. So this has 12. It had 18 in 2010, down to 12 in 2020, and I'd say probably less than that in the next census by driving around. It's almost apocalyptic back in there. There's an old garage that's kind of interesting, but lots of just foundations and ruins, and there are a few houses scattered about. In our final town of Richards, and seems like kind of a fitting end for this trip. I'm standing here in front of the Richards Senior Citizens area, I guess, building. And Richards is like a lot of the towns in the last kind of half of this video with the population going down. Only 43 people here, but at 96 in 2010, and you can just see those population figures of how small it's gotten. A lot of abandoned places. And early in this video, you know, the populations were kind of holding on as we were close to Kansas City. Obviously people maybe moving away from Kansas City or kind of into some of those communities, and then there would be a couple towns like Amsterdam was really nice, even though it was smaller than it used to be. And then as we got towards the end, it's like, man, these are some really downtrodden places. So I still enjoyed visiting them. A lot of interesting things to see. Hope you enjoyed it, and next time I'll see you down a back road.
Now that you made it to the end of that video, let me tell you about some of the extras on the channel. One of the things you can do is become a member. There are 3 levels of support. There's supporter, producer, and executive producer levels. All 3 have different levels of fun incentives and perks. If you haven't done so, please check out travelwiththewiseguy.com. There are lots of extras on there to explore. One of them is merchandise. We have Travel with the Wise Guy coffee mugs, Death Go Round t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and all sorts of fun things to show your support of this channel. Also on the website is a custom Google map. I've dropped pins in every place I've visited and linked the episode to each location. This seems to be a very popular feature for many of you. Also, sign up for my free newsletter that goes out about once a month. There are all sorts of links and tidbits on this page, old videos, podcasts, and just about everything I can think of I throw on the website. For all that information and more, go to travelwiththewiseguy.com. And now, the reason you're probably here, the outtakes. Hey buddy, how are you?
We're in Richards, in our last town. It took all day, but we found one. And it's kind of like the theme of the video. Very downtrodden, struggling for survival. Oh, almost fell apart, but it does go pretty good. It's definitely a classic. So I'm gonna give that, it's a tough one. Very authentic though. That's the big thing here, very authentic. I'll give it a 7.3.